I'm very pleased to be joined by Emma Howard-Boyd, Chair of the Environment Agency, in this fireside chat to discuss one of the recommendations made by the financial sector in response to the Dasgupta review, that of the use of public sector and philanthropic capital in de-risking and aiding in the development of revenue-generating, nature-based projects and solutions, something that I'm very passionate about, and I know Emma is too. So Emma, welcome. And maybe you can share with us that need as you see it.
Well, it's great to be here with you today, and really important to be discussing the recommendations from Dasgupta's incredibly important report. What we've been trying to do at the Environment Agency around nature-based solutions, where they are so vital to the many, many different projects that we are involved with across our organisation, predominantly in England, but obviously what we're trialling in England is relevant for the country as a whole, and ideally for the world as a whole, is the very practical things we need to do to join the world of delivery to the world of finance. And whether it is government grants and the need to crowd in additional finance, there is an important role for philanthropy, for the private sector to build the pipeline of projects and understand the barriers that currently exist to unlock where there is no doubt, undoubtedly, a huge demand to invest in nature's recovery and the solutions that nature can bring.
It's all about that barriers and unlocking those barriers, identifying exactly what are the most impactful interventions from public impact finance, like much as we've seen in other sectors, like in the renewable sector, where contracts for difference that guaranteed a subsidized price for a good regardless of variation in the market price, that ended up really unlocking the investment, the private investment that was then able to crowd into that space. But this model of using public finance, public sector funds specifically to support the growth of private investment, we've also seen some of that in the nature space already. I know we've been working with you on some projects as well on your natural environment investment readiness fund. But obviously we've seen out of the EIB with their natural capital finance facility that launched quite a few years ago. And so I think we're already starting to see some of these examples, right?
Absolutely. And again, it's about merging the world of environmental regulation with that of financial and economic regulation, but putting real economy action in place. So we see it through issues, whether it's water quality, peatland restoration, some of the work that we do as a delivery body around flood and protection, resilience, the importance of matching natural capital solutions, green infrastructure, blue infrastructure to grey infrastructure, understanding that when you're dealing with a river system, too much water, too little water, you have to look at the catchment as a whole. And within that, there will be nature-based solutions alongside your more traditional grey infrastructure. Understanding where we can start seeing revenue flows, because that is vital for attracting in the private sector finance. And that's where this mixture of regulatory initiatives and interventions, alongside building the capacity, the understanding for those who are at the forefront of delivery, some of them environmental groups, some of them agencies like the Environment Agency, Natural England, to bring all these skill sets together, build the expertise. And that is where the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund is building on the work that we did with DEFRA, Esme Fairbairn Foundation, Triodos Bank, working on some pilot projects, but to really help the environmental sector understand how to engage with the finance sector and make projects work that can draw in private sector finance.
I'm really glad you mentioned the work that you've done with Triodos and Esme Fairbairn. I think those pilots were really instructive and really interesting, and an example of showcasing genuine examples, which I still believe is one of the best ways of attracting more capital, is to show you can make money from these things, and that there are ways of solving some of these issues. I'm particularly passionate about the use of credit guarantee structures as really efficient ways to de-risk sustainable land use investments, for example, making them attractive to investors whose return appetite would otherwise just not be met. And there are really good examples that we've seen of that already being put in place. Rabobank's Agri3 fund, I was just talking with them the other day, that they've done in partnership with the UN, the FMO, which is the Dutch government's entrepreneurial bank arm, and IDH. And that fund, it provides guarantees to commercial banks and subordinated loans to their customers so that they can mobilize finance to farmers where there is a real prevention of deforestation or a shift to sustainable agriculture. And this is just one example, but it's an example that's, I think that fund is something like 500 million euros. It's a sizable one, and it's really starting to make an impact. But this is something that we could also look at within the scope of green banks as well, for example. And I know you and I have both been in conversations about the UK Investment Bank.
So I think the way that the Green Finance Institute has been focusing on financing green really does bring to the fore the need to make sure that we've got lots of projects that we can scale up and learn from small pilots and make sure that we can make them relevant for across the country. So financing green, absolutely key. I think it's also that mixture of the blue-green infrastructure merging with the grey infrastructure. That is where, if we get that right, we will be able to scale up projects. And again, I give the example of thinking about the catchment, river catchment, and where you will need different responses to flooding, to drought along that catchment. Some of it will be natural, some of it will be very much green solutions, some of it will have to involve grey infrastructure too, because of the scale of better protection that you need to deliver to a town or a city. So how we combine the green with the grey, and that's where I think some of the strategic positioning of the Green Finance Institute can help with the National Infrastructure Bank, where it's really key that as we meet our net zero commitments, the amount of infrastructure that will be built in the coming years in the UK, the fact that we need to bring in investors, institutional investors, large pension funds, asset owners, insurance companies who are increasingly looking not just at net zero, but climate resilience and nature's recovery. And this is the way that we can scale up the protection, the recovery, the way we prepare ourselves for the climate change that's embedded in the system, make sure that our infrastructure doesn't become stranded, and how we can fund that. All of this is vital to start small and move big very quickly.
Oh, I agree with absolutely everything you've said. The whole test, demonstrate, scale sort of approach, but also your point that you're making around ensuring that people are looking at potential green infrastructure solutions when right now maybe they just don't have access to even think about those things, and immediately go to the grey infrastructure solutions. And they're just not able to factor in sort of the less tangible benefits like health and well-being in the way that they're actually evaluating these projects. There's so much good work that we need to do in order to help private finance, and I think to really play in this space. And I think it's about public finance de-risking, but I think also there's a big piece of work to be done just around helping raise awareness on what there is out there. And we're actually wrapping up some research right now on, for example, how green banks are investing in nature-based solutions, and the feedback has been that there is certainly appetite, but the just public perception needs to sometimes be changed, and there's a huge need for more information. So again, something that you and I are hopefully in a great position to try and help with at the Environment Agency and at the Green Finance Institute.
and talk about it not just for the UK, but I know the Green Finance Institute is also doing work about scaling up the presence of green banks around the world. And I think that need for us to work at pace, to work at scale, and to share best practice, not just in this country, but in developed countries and developing countries as well. I think that is vital for us to make sure that this really is the decade of difference and decisive decade. I think President Biden's used that phrase, but also delivery, real action on the ground where we can see the difference that we're making.
As always, it's so inspiring chatting to you. That's a fantastic call for action there, Emma. And hopefully with the Dasgupta recommendations coming out and these financial institutions that have so kindly given of their time to comment on it, now is really a time to catalyze some of this action and look at how we can bring some of these solutions to market. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Thank you. Great to be with you.